When I woke up to police at my door, my husband had filed a 5150 claim saying I was being evaluated. He moved his mistress into our house, told everyone I'd snapped, and even gave her my jewelry with a smirk. She won't be back. I lost my job, my reputation, everything, until I played her the video he left on my nightstand. I was standing in the hallway of our own damn house in Tacoma, staring at a pair of ankle-strap heels I had never seen in my life. They were sitting right by the door like they belonged there, like she belonged there. And while I was trying to make sense of why another woman's shoes were in my home, I heard it. Laughter. A woman's laugh, coming from my bedroom. My bedroom, the same room where, 3 days earlier, my husband Mark told police I'd locked myself inside and threatened to hurt myself, triggering an involuntary wellness hold that left me handcuffed, confused, and humiliated in the back of a cruiser while neighbors watched. Except I hadn't threatened anything. I hadn't even been home. I'd been at Target, choosing new towels because ours had bleach stains he blamed on me being sloppy. By the time I checked my phone and saw 15 missed calls from him, the police had already been dispatched, and Mark was performing what must have been an Oscar-winning panic attack in the driveway. For 48 hours, I was stuck in a hospital psych wing while he played the grieving, terrified husband. He called my boss and told her I'd finally snapped. He called my sister and told her I'd refused meds. I don't even take meds. He made it sound like I was unstable enough to be committed long-term. Everyone believed him, because why wouldn't they? Mark had always been the calm one, the organized one, the good guy. But I got out. I proved I was fine, too fine, apparently, because when he picked me up from the hospital parking lot, he leaned in close and whispered, with this weird smirk on his face, "You almost made it too easy." I didn't understand what that meant until I walked into the house and saw those heels. My stomach dropped so hard I felt dizzy. I tried to call Mark's name, but my voice cracked. I pushed the bedroom door open, slow and shaky, and there he was, standing shirtless, holding a mug of coffee like it was a normal Saturday morning. And sitting on our bed, wearing one of my shirts, my shirt, was a woman I recognized only from Instagram comments. Emily, the flirty coworker he swore was just an office clown. She looked at me with this smug, tight little smile. The kind someone gives you when they've already decided you're the villain in their story. Mark didn't look surprised to see me. If anything, he looked annoyed. Like I'd ruined breakfast. I could barely breathe. My hands were shaking. I said the only words that made it out of my mouth. What is she doing here?" Emily raised her eyebrows at Mark like this was some sitcom. He shrugged. "Well, babe, I told her you were safely out of the way. But you're early." I felt like the room tilted sideways. I kept saying, "Safely out of the way, what does that even mean?" And that's when he had the nerve, the unbelievable nerve to say, "Look, you needed help, you weren't well." I did what I had to do. What he had to do, like having me committed was responsible, like I was the problem. But then he said something even worse, something that made Emily bite her lip to hide a smile. And honestly, if you'd stayed longer, it would have saved me some cleanup. Cleanup. He said it casually, like I was clutter. I wanted to scream, cry, throw something, anything, but I didn't. I just stared at him. And for the first time, I saw something cold behind his eyes. Something calculated. Something planned. Because that's when I noticed the corner of a small black device sticking out from behind the lamp on my nightstand. A device Mark had told me weeks ago was just a charging brick. It wasn't a charger. It was a camera. And attached to it was a tiny SD card, one I later learned held a full video diary Mark recorded in our bedroom. A diary he never expected me to see. But I did. And once I watched it, everything made sense. Everything he'd done. Everything he'd planned next. And everything he thought he'd get away with. I wish I could say the video only broke my heart. But it did more than that. It gave me the weapon I needed. Before everything fell apart, Mark and I looked like one of those couples people point to and say, "They seem solid." We lived in a small, older 2-story house in Tacoma's South End, close enough to the water that nights smelled like salt and cold metal. We'd been married 6 years. We weren't perfect, but I thought we were normal, ordinary, safe. Looking back, ordinary was the first lie. Mark worked in it for a logistics company near the port. He wasn't flashy. He wasn't loud. He wasn't the type you'd point to and say, "That guy's trouble." He had this measured, slow way of speaking that made people think he was thoughtful. Reliable, balanced. When he said something, people believed him because it sounded like he'd spent hours thinking about it. Meanwhile, I was the one who talked fast, got excited about things, cried at animal videos, and sometimes forgot where I put my keys. If anything, I thought we balanced each other out. But the truth is that every time he called himself the calm one, what he really meant was that I was the messy one. And I didn't realize how deep he'd planted that idea in people's heads until everything collapsed. Our marriage didn't break overnight. It cracked slowly, quietly, in places I didn't see. It started about 9 months before the psych hold, when Mark became obsessed with keeping order in the house. He said it was because work stress was getting to him. He wanted control where he could have it. That meant labels on everything, chore charts, schedules, reminders taped on the fridge. He needed the towels folded a certain way, the TV volume set to a specific number. My work bag had to stay in the closet because he didn't like seeing it by the couch. "It helps me stay grounded," he'd say. At first, I went along with it because it seemed harmless. And when I didn't follow one of his little systems, he'd sigh and rub his forehead like I'd disappointed him on some deep level. Then came the phone checking. He'd say things like, "You've been distant lately, is something going on?" Or "Just let me see you're okay." At first, he'd ask. Then he'd demand. Then he'd take my phone while I showered or slept and say he just needed reassurance. But never, not once, did it occur to me that he was projecting. I found out later that while he was accusing me of being secretive, he was texting Emily constantly. It wasn't just flirting. They were planning things. They talked about what life would look like once he handled his situation. I was the situation. Emily worked in his department, though technically she wasn't his direct report. She was younger, mid-20s, sarcastic, the kind of woman who acted unimpressed by everything. I'd met her twice at company gatherings. Both times, she greeted me with this cold, bored expression, like she already knew she didn't have to try around me. I ignored my instincts like an idiot. The real shift came 3 months before the fake suicide call. Mark stopped touching me, not out of anger, out of calculation. He didn't even seem frustrated, just detached, mechanical. He slept on the edge of the bed, spent more time at work, kept telling people I was going through a lot lately. I didn't know he'd started laying the groundwork. I didn't know he was planting rumors about my fragility, my stress, my episodes. I didn't know he had already told people I'd struggled for years with mental health. A complete fabrication. I didn't know he was preparing witnesses. I didn't know he was collecting reasons. I didn't know the camera in our bedroom wasn't just for surveillance, but for a story he was crafting, one where I was unstable, paranoid, emotional, unreliable. A story he needed people to believe so that when he finally tried to erase me from my own life, everyone would nod and say, "Yeah, we saw this coming." But the real kicker, the part that still keeps me up at night. He didn't start this because our marriage was dying. He started it because he wanted to keep the house, because he wanted a clean image, because he wanted Emily, because he wanted me gone without getting his hands dirty. And because he genuinely thought he was smart enough to make the world believe I had lost my mind. The weeks leading up to the fake suicide call feel different in my memory now, sharper, darker, like every moment had a shadow I didn't notice at the time. I keep replaying them, realizing just how much Mark had started tightening the screws around me, testing how far he could push before I noticed something was seriously wrong. It began with the concerned check-ins. He'd call me during work with this soft, careful voice. "Hey, just making sure you're okay. You sounded off this morning." But I hadn't sounded off. I'd sounded normal. Then he started mentioning that my coworkers had noticed I seemed stressed. When I asked who said that, he'd shrug and say, "A couple people. It doesn't matter who." But when I later asked one of my coworkers directly, she looked at me like she had no idea what I was talking about. Because she didn't, because Mark had lied. The whole time, I thought he was being overly worried. I didn't understand it was groundwork. He wasn't checking on my mental state, he was shaping a narrative. Then came the forgetfulness. He'd misplace things and blame me. My keys, my chargers, even documents for his job. He'd sigh and say, "You've been so scattered lately. Are you sleeping?" If I said yes, he'd say, "Really? You tossed and turned all night." If I said no, he'd say, "See, you're not stable right now." He always had a way to twist it. Then he started telling people I'd been acting strangely, but only when I wasn't around. So when he finally made the call to the police, the story already had roots. The real escalation, though, the part I still remember with a tight chest, was the night he pulled out his phone and recorded me without my knowledge. Not the bedroom camera footage, something else. It was a Thursday. I'd had a horrible day at work. A shipment problem that wasn't even my fault got pinned on me, and my manager snapped at me in front of a client. I came home drained, dropped my bag, and sat on the edge of the couch, head in my hands. I didn't even hear Mark come into the room. All I heard was his voice, low and concerned. "You okay?" I nodded. "Just tired." Then he said, "You seem overwhelmed. You've seemed like that for a while." I didn't look at him. I just said, "Yeah, today sucked. I just need a minute." Apparently, that was enough for him to pull out his phone, zoom in on me, and quietly say behind the camera, "She's spiraling again. This is what I've been dealing with." He saved it. He later sent it to his sister and said, "I'm really worried. She's not herself." I didn't know any of this until after everything blew up. But the biggest escalation, the moment he shifted from manipulative to outright dangerous, was when he started telling me I had memory gaps. Not just lost keys, big things, conversations he swore we had, decisions he insisted I'd agreed to. He'd say things like, "You don't remember, that's concerning." He'd lower his voice, slow down his words, talk to me like I was fragile porcelain. One night he told me I'd forgotten an entire argument we'd supposedly had. He said I'd yelled, slammed a door, and cried on the kitchen floor. None of that had happened. I knew it hadn't. But the way he looked at me, the steady, confident calm, made me question myself for half a second, and that's all he needed. Every reaction I had became another piece of evidence. Every disagreement was now an episode. Every tired sigh was a sign she's losing stability. He pushed and pushed, waiting for me to crack. But I didn't, so he forced it. He staged the panic call. He rehearsed the lines he'd give the cops. He probably practiced sounding breathless. He definitely prepped Emily, because she moved in the second I was taken away. The real escalation wasn't what he did. It was what he was preparing to do next. Because the video diary I found later, the one he didn't think I'd ever watch, that's where he explained why he needed me gone, and exactly what he planned to do if I didn't break down in the time frame he wanted. And that's when everything shifted from betrayal to survival. I didn't watch the video diary right away. Honestly, I didn't even know what it was at first. I just saw the tiny SD card sticking out behind the lamp, and on instinct, I slid it out and shoved it into my pocket before either of them noticed. I didn't trust myself to look at it while they were in the house. I didn't trust myself to do anything except breathe and not explode. I waited until that night, after I'd left the house and checked into a cheap motel off Pacific Avenue, the kind where the air conditioner rattles and the carpet feels damp no matter what. I locked the door, shoved a chair under the handle even though it was pointless, and sat on the bed with my laptop. My hands were shaking so hard, I almost dropped the card. When the first video opened, I felt something inside me twist. It was Mark sitting on the edge of our bed, the same spot where Emily had been hours earlier, looking straight into the camera. He wasn't panicked. He wasn't stressed. He wasn't confused or conflicted. He was calm, cool, collected, almost proud. The timestamp said the recording was from 5 weeks before the police dragged me out of our house. He cleared his throat like he was beginning a presentation. "Day 1, he said. Baseline, like I was a case study. Like this was a project. He talked about me like I wasn't a person, just a variable he needed to manipulate. She's resisting the narrative so far, he said. But that's normal. It'll take time. Emily thinks I should accelerate the timeline, but I want to do this right." I froze, rewound, played it again. Emily thinks I should accelerate the timeline. So she wasn't some clueless affair. She wasn't some fling that got out of hand. She was part of it, fully, actively, for weeks. He kept talking. "My goal is to create a pattern. Concern, then confusion, then crisis. If people see the lead-up, they'll believe the ending." The ending. God, I felt sick. Video after video, the story got worse. He described the things he was doing to me, the lost items, the fake concerned calls, the lies he told other people, and then he'd evaluate my reactions like he was grading me. "She cried today, not enough. I need her to unravel more. She questioned herself twice. That's progress. She apologized for something she didn't even do. She's getting softer. And then, God, even worse. I told her she forgot the argument. She didn't buy it, but she hesitated. That hesitation is key. Doubt is the first crack. I covered my mouth because I was trying not to scream. He knew exactly what he was doing. Every move was deliberate. Every concern was rehearsed. But the real punch to the gut, the real twist came halfway through the recordings, in a video from the week before my involuntary hold. He wasn't alone. Emily sat next to him, cross-legged on our bed, wearing one of his t-shirts. She leaned her shoulder into him, casual and comfortable, like they'd done it 1,000 times. She smirked at the camera. "People are already noticing she's unstable," she said. "Your sister literally told me she feels bad for you." "This is working." Mark nodded like they were talking about a work project. "The next step is getting her employer on board. If they think she's slipping, it'll strengthen the narrative when the time comes." When the time comes, like he was scheduling the destruction of my life into his calendar. Then Emily said the line that still makes my chest tighten. "So, when she's out of the picture, how soon can I move in?" And Mark, my husband, didn't hesitate. He didn't blink. He didn't even pretend to feel guilty. He just said, "I'm giving it 2 weeks, maybe less." I paused the video and just sat there, staring at the frozen frame of the two of them planning my erasure like it was nothing. That was the moment it hit me. They weren't just cheating. They were colluding. Strategizing, plotting. They wanted to replace me. They wanted to bury me under a story so convincing no one would ever believe I could be normal again. They thought I was already done. But the sickest part, they didn't stop there. Because the next video, the one recorded 3 days before the police showed up, that one revealed an even darker truth, one that made everything before it look like warm-up drills. I didn't sleep that night in the motel. I don't think I even blinked. I just sat there replaying every video, every second of Mark and Emily plotting like I was some obstacle they needed to phase out. I wasn't a wife to them. I was a problem, a nuisance, a stain they wanted cleaned up. By dawn, something inside me had snapped into place. Not rage, not grief, something colder, clearer, like everything I'd been feeling had burned off and now there was just a quiet, sharp core left behind. I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to confront them. I wasn't going to fall apart the way they hoped. I was going to take everything they'd built, the entire fake narrative, the lies, the staged episodes, and use it against them. And to do that, I needed to get smart. The first step was securing proof, not just the video diary. I needed timestamps, backups, multiple copies, in case they tried to twist anything or accidentally delete files. I spent 3 hours duplicating everything onto 2 encrypted drives, cloud storage, and a password-protected folder on a burner laptop I bought at a pawn shop that morning. Step 2 was staying quiet. Silence is a weapon people underestimate. If I stormed into the house and started throwing accusations, Mark would twist it into another episode. Emily would run straight to his sister. They'd flip the story again, make me sound unstable, claim I was hallucinating. They'd practiced for this. They were prepared, so I did the opposite of what they expected. I went invisible. I called out sick to work, not a breakdown, just a simple bad cold. I stayed off social media. I didn't go home, I used cash, I didn't contact Mark at all. I wanted them relaxed, comfortable, confident they'd already won. But I kept thinking about that last video, the one from 3 days before the police dragged me out. Mark had sat alone on the bed, staring at the camera with this strange, excited look. "We're close," he'd whispered. "She's almost there. Just one more push." One more push. He'd been planning a climax, and that terrified me in a way I couldn't shake. What had he meant? What was the ending he'd been building toward? But fear wasn't useful right then. Strategy was. So the next step was allies. Not friends, because Mark had poisoned most of them against me. Not family, he'd laid groundwork with them too. I needed people he didn't know I still had ties with. My former manager from my old job in Seattle, Julia, was one. She'd always said, "If you ever need anything, call." I wasn't sure if she'd meant it. But when I explained I needed help gathering documentation and possibly a witness in case things escalated legally, she didn't even hesitate. She said, "How soon can you meet me?" Then there was my cousin Zach, the one Mark hated because he's nosy. Zach works in cybersecurity for a private firm. He's paranoid as hell, which is exactly what I needed. Within an hour, he'd scrubbed my phone, secured my accounts, and given me a second number Mark couldn't trace. He also said something that stuck with me. If he's built a story about you being unstable, the worst thing you can do is act emotional. You need to be colder than him, scarier. I took that to heart. The final step, the one that took the most planning, was getting back inside the house without Mark knowing. Not to confront, not to fight. To gather evidence he didn't realize he left behind. Because if he'd hidden one camera, there might be more. And if he'd recorded those diary entries, there might be files on his laptop or external drives. I knew how thorough he was, and if he was building a pattern, he would have wanted backups. So I needed access. And luckily, I knew Mark's routines better than he did. He always did grocery runs on Wednesdays after work. He always used the same store. And he always spent at least 20 minutes in the beer aisle comparing brands like it was a life-or-death decision. So that Wednesday, I waited 2 blocks away, watching the driveway. At 6:12 p.m. he left. At 6:14, Emily left too, probably to get Starbucks or attention or whatever she fed on. At 6:16, I walked up the steps of my own house with a glove on one hand, a backup drive in my pocket, and steady breathing that didn't feel like mine. I had 1 hour to find the rest of the truth, 1 hour before the second twist hit me so hard it almost knocked me to my knees. The house felt wrong the second I stepped inside. Not messy, not disturbed, just staged. Like a showroom version of my life. The air smelled like Emily's perfume, sugary and artificial, and there was a throw blanket I'd never seen draped over the couch in a way that made me feel like a stranger in my own living room. I didn't let myself stop moving. I went straight to Mark's office, his sanctuary, as he called it. He kept his laptop in the top drawer, always plugged into a small external drive. He thought he was subtle hiding things there, but I'd helped him set up that exact system 2 years ago. It took 3 seconds to unlock the drawer with his backup key taped under the desk. His laptop booted up, and I waited for the inevitable password prompt. Except it didn't come. His computer logged me in automatically. That stopped me cold. Mark never left anything unprotected. He used complex passwords for everything, changed them monthly, sometimes weekly. He guarded his devices like they contained nuclear codes. So why leave the laptop open now? I opened the external drive first. It was almost empty, too empty, just 2 folders, one called Work Docs, another called Archive 2. The first was a decoy. I clicked the second. Inside it was a video file named Final Plan May 21. My stomach dropped. The date was 2 weeks away. I clicked it, and the screen filled with a familiar bedroom, the same angle from the hidden camera. Except this time Mark wasn't sitting calmly. He was pacing, hands running through his hair, muttering to himself. It took him a minute to face the camera. When he did, his expression was nothing like the measured, calculated man I'd seen in earlier recordings. This version of Mark was stressed, agitated. His eyes were wild, like something had started slipping out of his control. He sat on the edge of the bed and exhaled hard. "Emily's getting impatient," he said sharply. "She wants a timeline. She wants a commitment." He pressed his fingers to his temples. "She doesn't understand that this can't be rushed." He paused. Then he said something that made every hair on my arms stand up. "The first attempt didn't stick. She's too stubborn." She snapped back faster than expected. The first attempt, the psych hold. He continued, speaking to the camera like it was a confidant. "The goal is a clean break, a real break, something undeniable, something that forces long-term intervention. If she resists again, I'll have to escalate. I don't want that, but Emily says there's no other way." I pressed pause. My pulse hammered. He wasn't just talking about reputation destruction. He wasn't just planning to commit me. He wanted something permanent. I rewound 5 seconds just to hear it again, just to make sure I hadn't imagined the tone in his voice when he said escalate. He sounded eager. I forced myself to keep watching. Then the real twist hit. He stood up and opened the top dresser drawer, the one where I used to keep my pajamas. He pulled something out, and my breath caught when I saw it, a prescription bottle with my name on it. Except I didn't take medication. I'd never taken anything stronger than ibuprofen. He held the bottle up to the camera. These should look convincing enough. If she forgets she took them, well. He smiled in a twisted, satisfied way. Accidents happen. I froze, completely. He'd filled a bottle with God knows what and labeled it with my name. He was staging an overdose, something not fatal but damaging. Long-term, enough to get me permanently committed. My hands shook so hard I almost dropped the laptop. But the twist wasn't over. He pulled out a second bottle. This one didn't have my name on it. It had his. But the medication inside wasn't for him. I recognized the name instantly. Zach had told me about it once. A sedative, strong, dangerous in the wrong dose. Mark looked into the camera, face blank. If the first option fails, I'll use this. On her or on myself, depending on what story we need. On her or on myself. He was planning scenarios, alternate endings. Not just committing me, not just ruining me. He was planning to frame me. Either as unstable and sedated or as violent. That's when something clicked so hard and loud inside me it felt like a bone snapping clean. Mark hadn't lost control. He'd expanded the plan. And the scariest part? Emily knew. She was helping, she was pushing him. The last thing he said before the clip ended was, May 21 is the deadline. If she's still resisting by then, we finish it. My hands went cold. Today was May 11, 10 days. That was the moment I realized I wasn't dealing with a manipulator. I was dealing with someone who had crossed into something darker, someone who believed he was entitled to rewrite my life, my reputation, even my existence. And he had no idea I knew any of it. But I did. And I wasn't running. I was planning. Because now I knew exactly how to destroy him with his own blueprint. I didn't understand how a man I'd lived with for 6 years, a man I thought I knew down to his smallest habits, could calmly plan something this cold. Not until I found the second set of files. They weren't on the laptop. They were on a thumb drive taped under his office chair, labeled with one word in Sharpie, justification. It wasn't justification. It was confession. There were 4 videos inside, all recorded late at night when the house was dark. These were different. No calm analysis. No rehearsed lines, no Emily, just Mark talking to himself, raw, unfiltered. And what he said took everything I thought I understood about him and twisted it inside out. The first video began with him staring straight into the lens, pupils huge, like he hadn't slept in days. She doesn't get it, he whispered. She thinks marriage is emotional. She thinks love is love. He laughed, not loud, a quiet, broken chuckle. Marriage is leverage, stability, optics. He leaned forward until his face filled the screen. She was supposed to make me look reliable, calm, balanced. That was her job, my job. He said it like I was a tool he purchased at Home Depot. But lately, he scoffed, she's been slipping, questioning things, not trusting me, acting like she's my equal. He shook his head, jaw clenching. I can't have that, not now, not when everything is finally aligning. He reached off camera and rustled papers. When he held them up, my heart sank. A promotion packet from his company. A director-level position, one he'd been passed over for twice before. They want a man who's stable, he muttered. Someone with a peaceful home life, someone respectable, someone steady. He glared at the screen. They think I'm that person. They believe it, they just need proof, evidence of a consistent, grounded personal life. Then he said something that made my skin crawl. Emily fits the image better. She's clean, simple, predictable, no family drama, no moods. No questions. Clean, simple, predictable. He wasn't in love with her, he was strategizing her. He kept going, voice tightening. She'll make the perfect partner for the role, not too emotional, not too assertive, doesn't challenge me. That's what they look for, someone who enhances stability, not corrupts it. Corrupts, he meant me, because I had opinions, because I worked, because I asked questions, because I didn't worship him. He lifted his promotion paperwork and tapped it like it was gold. This isn't just a job, it's my future, my reputation, my entire career path, and I'm not letting her, he meant me, ruin this for me with her unpredictability. Then he leaned in, voice dropping to something icy. She made a mistake when she started doubting me. That was the moment she stopped being an asset. Asset. And once a partner stops being an asset, he continued, they become a liability. He said liability like it was a death sentence. The second video was worse. He sat in the dark whispering, they need to see her decline. They need to believe she's been unstable for a long time, long enough that when things finally break, it makes sense. His hand shook a little. I didn't want it to get this far, he said. But Emily's right. I need a narrative that leaves no doubt. Once the story is set, nobody will question the transition. Transition, me out. Emily in, clean, smooth, undisputed. The third video was the part that chilled me to the bone. He wasn't angry. He wasn't stressed. He sounded almost relieved. People trust me, he said, smiling faintly. I've spent years building that. The calm one, the reasonable one. Everyone believes me first. Always, that's my advantage. He paused. One accusation from her won't stand against a pattern from me. A pattern, that word again. Then the final video, the one that ended any microscopic piece of hope that some part of this was about love or desperation. He looked into the camera, eyes cold as steel. She's not a person to me anymore. She's a variable. And variables get controlled. Controlled, that was his reason, not heartbreak, not confusion, not even love for Emily. Control. Image, career, reputation, power. I wasn't a wife. I was a stepping stone he needed to remove cleanly so he could rise without baggage. He wasn't destroying me because he hated me. He was destroying me because I was in his way. That was the moment I stopped grieving who I thought he was, and started planning how to end him on his own terms, using the same tools he trusted more than anything: documentation, pattern, optics, reputation. If he wanted a narrative, I was about to give the world a better one. The moment I finished the last video, I knew exactly what I had to do. Not scream, not hide, not run. I needed to hit him where he lived, his reputation, his image, his perfect, calm guy persona. The thing he valued more than me, more than Emily, more than anything. I wasn't going to expose him in pieces. I was going to detonate the entire structure he'd built. Step one was timing. I waited 3 days, silent, no calls, no texts, nothing he could twist into erratic behavior. I let him believe he'd scared me off. On the morning of May 14, he even emailed my sister saying he was praying for me to get the help I needed. That email ended up being useful later. While he played grieving husband, I met with Julia and Zach. We built a trail, screenshots, timestamps, backups, off-site storage. We organized everything chronologically. His videos, his staged evidence, the fake pill bottles, the hidden camera footage, the messages with Emily, and the final plan file with the May 21 deadline. We made it so airtight that even if he tried to lie, every word would trap him deeper. Step 2 was finding the perfect audience. Not the police, not yet. Not my family, not yet. His employer. The people whose approval he worshipped. The people he bragged about impressing. The people he believed would see him as director material. I scheduled a meeting with HR and his department head. I didn't tell them why. I just said it was regarding an urgent ethical concern involving an employee preparing for a leadership position. They responded within an hour. The meeting was set for 9:00 a.m. on May 17. Step 3 was making sure Mark was home when everything collapsed. At 8:30 a.m. I parked down the street. Emily's car was gone, good. Mark was in the driveway. Even better, I walked straight up the steps, knocked once, and the second he opened the door, I saw the shift in his eyes. Shock, then annoyance, then calculation. "Where have you been?" he asked, voice full of fake worry. "You look exhausted." "Come inside, we need to talk." I stepped past him without asking. "Yeah," I said, "we do." He started his script immediately. "I know you're struggling. I'm here to help you. I never wanted things to get." I held up the external drive. His face drained. "Don't," he whispered, too late. "I watched everything," I said quietly. "Every single file, every plan, every word you said about me." His mouth opened, but no sound came out. "And by the way," I added, "your computer logs show automatic backups, even the ones you thought you deleted." That's when the panic hit him. His breathing changed, his hands shook. For a split second, I saw behind the calm mask, the real Mark, the one who wasn't composed or strategic or superior. He was nothing without control. "Let's sit down," he pleaded. "We can fix this." "You're not thinking clearly," I laughed. "That line won't work anymore." At exactly 8:56, I walked out, leaving him pale and silent in the hallway. At 9:00, I stepped into the conference room at his office. I didn't cry, I didn't rant, I didn't embellish. I showed them everything. It took 20 minutes for their faces to shift from disbelief to horror. They paused the video diary so many times I lost count. When they reached the part where he held up the fake pill bottle with my name on it, the HR director actually closed her laptop and whispered, "Oh my God." When it ended, they asked one question: "Do you feel safe?" "Yes," I said. "Because I'm not leaving here alone." They escorted me straight to a detective they already called. Mandatory reporting. The detective took my statement, copied the drive, and asked me to wait in the lobby. At 11:42 a.m., police walked into Mark's office and arrested him in front of his entire department. The charges were long: coercive control, filing false reports, unlawful surveillance, attempted fraud, possession of controlled substances with intent to administer, conspiracy. Emily was picked up an hour later. When Mark saw me standing outside the building as they walked him to the cruiser, he didn't look angry. He looked confused, like the world had tilted the wrong way. "You ruined everything," he hissed. "No," I said. "You recorded everything." The case is moving fast. His job terminated him immediately. His family knows the truth. My employer apologized and reinstated me with full back pay. My sister cried when she saw the footage. And me. I'm living in a small apartment in Tacoma now, quiet, clean, mine. No cameras, no scripts, no control. Last week I got the final item I needed, the divorce judgment. Everything he used against me became evidence that freed me from him completely. And the kicker? Emily told investigators Mark called her simple and predictable. Turns out he underestimated both of us. I'm done with him. Done with who I was with him. And if he ever wonders how his perfect image collapsed so fast, I hope someone reminds him, I only used his own story. He wrote the whole thing himself.